Last night on The Late Show, Stephen Colbert's sharp jabs at Elon Musk's projects sparked a fiery clash. Insults flew, stocks crashed, and Musk stormed off after ripping off his mic. The lights were bright, the crowd was buzzing, and the stage of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was set for a big night. Stephen, with his quick smile and sharp wit, welcomed everyone to the show. The audience clapped loudly, excited for what was coming. Tonight's guest was none other than Elon Musk, the billionaire behind Tesla, SpaceX, and more. People leaned forward in their seats, knowing this could be a wild ride. Stephen had a way of asking tough questions, and Elon wasn't known for staying quiet. Stephen started with his usual charm. "Folks, we've got a real trailblazer tonight," he said, grinning. "Elon Musk, the guy who wants to send us to Mars, make cars drive themselves, and maybe even put chips in our brains." The crowd laughed, but Elon, sitting in the guest chair, just nodded with a tight smile. He looked ready, but there was a spark in his eyes, like he knew something was coming. The interview began smoothly. Stephen asked about Tesla's new electric cars, and Elon talked about how they were changing the world. "We're making the planet greener," Elon said, his voice steady. "Electric cars are the future." The audience clapped, but Stephen tilted his head like he was about to stir things up. "Greener, huh?" Stephen said, raising an eyebrow. "That's great, Elon, but didn't one of your Tesla factories get in trouble for polluting a river? I mean, that's not exactly saving the planet, is it?" The crowd gasped, then giggled nervously. Elon's smile faded a little. "We're fixing that," he said quickly. "It's a small issue." But Stephen wasn't done. He leaned forward, his voice playful but sharp. "Small issue? Come on, Elon, your cars are cool. But let's talk about those self-driving features. Didn't one crash into a truck because it thought it was a cloud or something?" The audience burst into laughter. Elon's face tightened, and he shifted in his seat. "It's complicated," he said. "The tech is still learning." Stephen kept going, like a boxer, throwing quick punches. "Learning? Elon, it's been years. Maybe your cars need a better teacher." The crowd roared, and Elon's jaw clenched. He tried to laugh it off, but you could tell he was getting annoyed. Stephen was poking at every big project Elon was known for, and the audience was eating it up. Then Stephen went for a bigger jab. "And SpaceX? That's your rocket company, right? You're gonna colonize Mars? I mean, that's bold, but didn't one of your rockets blow up on the launch pad? Kinda hard to get to Mars if your rockets are playing fireworks on Earth." The crowd howled, and Elon's eyes narrowed. "We learn from every test," he said, his voice colder now. "Failure is part of progress," Stephen smirked. "Failure's part of progress? Elon, your Tesla stock took a nosedive this morning after that last earnings report. Investors aren't exactly cheering for progress when their money's going poof." The audience gasped, then clapped wildly. Elon's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "The market fluctuates," he said through gritted teeth. "Tesla's fine," but Stephen was on a roll, and he wasn't slowing down. "Fluctuates? Elon, your stock's dropping faster than one of your rockets. Maybe Wall Street's tired of waiting for your big promises to actually happen." The crowd went wild, but Elon wasn't smiling anymore. His face was red, and he leaned forward, pointing at Stephen. "You don't understand how this works," he snapped. "Building the future isn't easy." Stephen didn't back down. He leaned in, too, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, I get it, Elon. You're building the future. But what about that Neuralink thing? Sticking chips in people's brains? Sounds like a sci-fi movie gone wrong." The audience roared again, but Elon's patience was wearing thin. "Neuralink will change lives," he said, his voice loud now. "You're just making jokes." The tension was thick, like a storm about to break. Stephen's eyes gleamed like he knew he was getting under Elon's skin. He paused, letting the crowd's laughter fade, then delivered another blow. "Change lives? Elon, your projects are cool on paper, but half the time, they're just big, expensive dreams that don't work. Like that Hyperloop idea? Where's that now? Stuck in a tunnel somewhere? The crowd erupted, but Elon slammed his hand on the armrest. That's enough, Elon shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. The audience went quiet, shocked. Stephen raised his hands, pretending to be innocent. What? I'm just asking questions, Elon. Isn't that what you're all about? Truth and progress? But Elon wasn't having it. He stood up, yanking at the microphone clipped to his jacket. You're not asking questions, he yelled. You're mocking everything I've built. The crowd was on edge, whispering to each other. Stephen leaned back in his chair, still smirking. Mocking? Elon, I'm just pointing out the facts. Your projects sound amazing, but they keep tripping over their own feet. Maybe it's time to slow down and actually deliver something? That was the final straw. Elon ripped off his microphone, the wire snapping as he threw it to the ground. I'm done with this, he roared, his face furious. The audience gasped, and Stephen's smirk froze. Elon pointed at him, his voice shaking with anger. You think you're clever, but you don't get it. I'm building the future, and you're just a guy with a microphone. The crowd was silent, stunned by the outburst. Elon turned to storm off the stage, but Stephen wasn't finished. He stood up, calling after him. A guy with a microphone? At least my microphone works, unlike your rockets. Elon froze at the edge of the stage, his back to Stephen. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would Elon turn back and fight? Or would he walk away? The air was electric, and the showdown was far from over. Elon stood still, his shoulders tense, 1 foot off the stage. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the lights. Stephen's last jab, at least my microphone works unlike your rockets, hung in the air like a dare. The audience waited, eyes wide, some leaning forward, others clutching their seats. Nobody knew what Elon would do, but the room felt like it was about to explode. Slowly, Elon turned around. His face was a storm, eyes blazing, jaw tight. He stepped back toward the center of the stage, pointing a shaking finger at Stephen. You think you can just tear me down? He shouted. You sit here cracking jokes, while I'm out there building things you can't even dream of. His voice boomed, and the crowd gasped, a mix of shock and excitement rippling through them. Stephen didn't flinch. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, a sly grin creeping across his face. Building things? Elon, you're building headlines, mostly about what goes wrong. The audience burst into laughter, but it was nervous, like they knew this was no ordinary talk show moment. Stephen stepped out from behind his desk, closing the gap between them. Let's be real, he said, his voice sharp. Your boring company? That's supposed to revolutionize tunnels? All we got was a fancy hole in Las Vegas that's basically a tourist trap. Elon's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're talking about, he snapped. The Boring Company is cutting costs, making transportation faster. Stephen cut him off, waving a hand. Faster? Elon, it's a single-lane tunnel where cars crawl at 35 miles an hour. My grandma's golf cart moves quicker than that. The crowd roared, clapping wildly, but Elon's face went redder. He took a step closer, and for a second it looked like he might lunge. You're twisting everything, Elon yelled. You cherry-pick failures and ignore the wins. SpaceX landed rockets on barges. Tesla's building millions of cars. His voice cracked with frustration, and the audience quieted, sensing his anger was raw. But Stephen was relentless. He tilted his head, his tone mocking. Landed rockets? Sure, when they don't explode first. And Tesla? Your cars are great, until the doors don't open or the wheels fall off. Quality control, Elon. Ever heard of it? The crowd gasped, then laughed, but the laughter died fast. Elon's hands balled into fists. "You're a clown," he spat. "You mock what you don't understand. Neuralink is connecting brains to computers, and you're making sci-fi jokes." Stephen shrugged, unfazed. "Connecting brains? Elon, your pigs with brain chips looked like a bad high school science project. What's next? Teaching them to dance?" The audience howled, but Elon's glare could have burned a hole through the stage. Stephen paced now like a lawyer making a case. "Look, Elon, I get it. You're a dreamer. But dreams don't mean much when your Tesla stock's tanking because you overpromise and underdeliver. Wall Street's not buying your hype anymore." Elon shook his head, his voice low and furious. "The stock market doesn't scare me. I'm in this for the long haul, not your cheap applause." "Cheap applause?" Stephen shot back, stepping closer. "You're the one chasing headlines, tweeting crazy stuff to pump your stock. Remember when you said Tesla was worth $1 trillion? How's that going now?" The crowd oohed, and Elon's face twitched. "You're obsessed with my tweets," he growled. "Maybe if you spent less time online and more time learning, you'd get it." Stephen laughed, loud and sharp. "Learning? From you? The guy who said he'd have 1 million robo-taxis on the road by 2020? It's 2025, Elon. Where are they? Stuck in traffic with your Hyperloop?" The audience erupted, but Elon was done playing nice. He stepped right up to Stephen, their faces inches apart. "You're a coward," Elon said, his voice low and dangerous. "Hiding behind jokes while I take risks to change the world." The crowd went silent, the tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Stephen didn't back down. He stared right into Elon's eyes, his voice steady. "Risks? You take risks with other people's money, Elon. Investors, workers, customers. They're the ones paying for your vision when it crashes." The audience murmured, some nodding, others too stunned to react. Elon's eyes flashed with fury. "You have no idea what it takes," he said, his voice shaking. "I've put everything into this, my time, my money, my life. And you just sit here throwing darts." Stephen smirked, leaning in. "Darts? I'm just holding up a mirror, Elon. And you don't like what you see." For a moment neither man moved. The crowd was frozen, waiting for the next blow. Then Elon stepped back, his hands shaking. "I don't need this," he muttered, reaching for the microphone wire still dangling from his jacket. He yanked at it, but it was tangled, and the crowd tittered nervously. Stephen saw his chance and pounced. "What's wrong, Elon? Can't even get your mic off? Maybe you should call one of your robots to help." The audience laughed, but it was uneasy. Now, Elon's face was a mask of rage. He finally tore the wire free and threw it to the ground, the thud echoing in the silent studio. "You're nothing," he said, his voice cold. "You'll be forgotten while I'm changing history." He turned to leave again, but Stephen's voice stopped him dead. "Changing history?" Stephen called, his tone dripping with scorn. "Elon, the only thing you're changing is your stock price, and not in a good way." The crowd gasped, and Elon spun around, his eyes wild. He opened his mouth to fire back, but the words didn't come. Instead, he stood there, chest heaving, the weight of the moment crashing down. The audience leaned forward, hearts pounding, as the showdown teetered on the edge of something explosive. Elon stood frozen, his breath heavy, eyes locked on Stephen. The crowd's gasp echoed, fading into a tense silence. Stephen's taunt, "Elon, the only thing you're changing is your stock price, and not in a good way," cut deep, and Elon's face twisted with rage. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The audience leaned forward, hearts racing, sensing the showdown was about to erupt. The stage lights glared down, making the moment feel like a pressure cooker ready to burst. Finally, Elon found his voice, low and shaking. "You think you've won?" he said, stepping toward Stephen. "You think a few cheap shots make you right? I'm building a future you can't even imagine." His voice rose, cracking with emotion. "Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, they're not just companies. Their hope for humanity. The crowd murmured, some clapping softly, but Stephen wasn't swayed. He crossed his arms, his smirk sharp as a blade. Hope, Stephen said, stepping forward to meet Elon. That's a nice word, Elon, but hope doesn't fix broken promises. You keep selling dreams, but the real world wants results. The audience oohed, and Elon's eyes flashed. Results? He shouted. I've launched rockets to space. I've built electric cars from nothing. What have you done, Stephen? Told jokes on TV? The crowd gasped, and a few cheered, caught up in Elon's fire. Stephen's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. Jokes? I hold people like you accountable, he said, his voice cold. You talk about saving the world, but what about the workers in your factories? The ones who say they're overworked, underpaid, while you tweet about Mars? The audience clapped, louder now, and Elon's face flushed. You're twisting it, he snapped. My teams are pushing boundaries, not whining. Pushing boundaries? Stephen shot back, pacing the stage. Or pushing people too far. Your Tesla plants have safety violations piling up. Your hope looks like chaos to them. The crowd roared, and Elon shook his head, his voice rising. You don't get it. Change is messy. You can't make progress without breaking a few eggs. Stephen stopped pacing, turning to face him. Eggs? Those are people's lives, Elon, not your personal playground. The tension was unbearable, the air thick with anger. Elon took another step, pointing at Stephen. You're a parasite, he said, his voice venomous. You tear down builders because it's easy. I'm risking everything, and you're just nothing. The crowd gasped, shocked by the raw insult. Stephen's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. Nothing? He said, his voice steady. I'm the guy calling out your failures so the world sees the truth. You're not a hero, Elon. You're a salesman who's run out of tricks. Elon's hands shook, his face a mix of fury and desperation. You want truth? He yelled. The truth is, I'm fighting for a better world while you're stuck in this studio, pandering for laughs. He turned to the audience, arms outstretched. You cheer for him, but I'm the one taking us to the stars. Some clapped, others booed, the room splitting in two. Stephen saw his chance and pounced. The stars? Elon, you can't even keep your cars on the road. Your better world is a fantasy, and everyone's starting to see it. The crowd erupted, and Elon's eyes widened like he'd been slapped. He staggered back, his voice dropping. You're wrong, he muttered, but the fight was draining. From him. Stephen pressed forward, relentless. Wrong? Your stock's crashing, your projects are stalling, and your big ideas are crumbling. Face it, Elon. Your empire's built on sand. The audience clapped, but it was quieter now, sensing the weight of the moment. Elon stood still, his chest heaving. For a second he looked like he might fire back, but something broke inside him. He reached for the tangled microphone wire still hanging from his jacket, yanking it free with a snap. I'm done, he said, his voice hollow. He threw the mic to the ground, the thud echoing through the silent studio. The crowd watched, stunned, as he turned toward the stage exit. Stephen wasn't finished. Running away? He called, his voice sharp. That's your style, isn't it? When things get tough, you dodge. Just like you dodge questions about your factories, your stocks, your failures. Elon stopped, his back to Stephen, his shoulders trembling. The crowd held its breath, waiting for one final explosion. But Elon didn't turn around. You're not worth it, he said, his voice barely audible. None of this is. With that, he walked off the stage, his footsteps heavy, the stage lights casting his shadow long and dark. The audience erupted into whispers, some clapping, others shouting. Stephen stood alone, his face a mix of triumph and unease. He turned to the crowd, forcing a smile. Well, folks, he said, his voice lighter now, that's one way to end an interview. The audience laughed, But it was nervous, the weight of the clash lingering. The cameras panned to the empty stage where Elon had stood, the broken microphone lying like a symbol of the night's chaos. Stephen sat back at his desk, shuffling papers, but his eyes lingered on the exit. The crowd clapped as the show cut to commercial, but the energy in the room was raw, unsettled. Elon was gone, his exit final, the confrontation sealed as a moment. No one would forget. The viral clips were already spreading online, and the world was buzzing with reactions. But on that stage, the story ended with a billionaire's retreat and a host's sharp words ringing in the air.